This is not Squaw Valley. It's Minnesota's snow-covered Metropolitan Stadium, where last Sunday, one of the NFL's coveted playoff spots was decided. With only 2 weeks remaining, 12 of the 26 teams still had a shot at Super Bowl VI. So today we're bringing you two of the crucial games that last week clinched titles. You'll see the Vikings beat the Lions and the Chiefs cliffhanger over the Raiders. In the winter carnival atmosphere of Minnesota, the mood was anything but festive for the Vikings and Lions. The entire season for each team had come down to this one game. The two teams had met in the season opener, with the Vikings prevailing by only 3 points. Afterwards, Detroit's Joe Schmidt publicly promised that his team would make the playoffs. But all season long, the Lions have been plagued with mistakes. Still, they have the league's leading running attack. The Vikings depend on their defense to stop it, for their offense has been nearly non-existent. Minnesota is one of the few contenders in recent years not to have an established quarterback. Bud Grant has been vacillating between three passers. That the Vikings have lost only 3 games is testament to their great defense. I'm Bob Delaney, and this is the NFL Game of the Week. In sunny 20-degree weather, a standing-room-only crowd would see whether the Lions could overcome the Vikings' proud defense. They had only to wait until the game's third play for the answer. Greg Landry's first pass was picked off by linebacker Roy Winston and returned 29 yards to the end zone. It was the first touchdown scored by the Viking defense this season, compared with 7 in the same number of games in 1970. Minnesota was coming off a loss to San Diego, in which the Chargers stung the Viking defense by scoring a season's-high 30 points against them. Today, they were out to avenge that indignity, as kick returner Ron Jesse can testify. This was a key to the game, as Jesse, a rookie and the leading returner in all of football, was kept in check today. On this second series for Detroit, Landry stayed with the air route despite the fact his 2 leading receivers, tight end Charlie Sanders and flanker Earl McCullough, wouldn't play today due to injuries. Sanders' replacement was number 87, Big Craig Cotton, who took this pass for a Lion first down on the Minnesota 36. But here, the Lions continued to pass, and the attack stalled. Joe Schmidt called for a field goal attempt on a 4th and 2 situation, and Earl Mann made it from the 35. Minnesota 7, Detroit 3. Until late in the second quarter, neither team could do much on offense. Gary Coazzo started today for Minnesota, and his passing was hampered by the brilliant play of Lem Barney, number 20, who's returned at cornerback after being injured for part of the season. Barney almost single-handedly stopped a Minnesota series and forced a punt. He then gave the ball right back to Minnesota. This second Detroit turnover gave the Vikings the ball on the Lion 10-yard line, and Joe Schmidt helplessly watched as Coazzo moved the ball on the ground. With 2 minutes left in the half and the ball resting on the 3, the Lion goal line defense braced itself for a certain run. The man in the spotlight is Clint Jones, number 26, who this year has taken over for Dave Osborne as the Vikings' premier runner. Jones got the call, twisted past several tackles, and just got the ball over the goal line for the touchdown. Detroit's errors had given the Vikings 2 touchdowns and a 14-3 lead. There was less than 2 minutes left in the first half now, and Detroit desperately wanted to get on the board any way it could before the half ended. Landry had to pass, and the Viking defense was waiting for him. After number 22, safety Paul Krause, knocked down one pass, Landry was made to hesitate before the hard-charging front line. But number 88, Alan Page, was called for roughing the passer. Page's overexuberance gave Detroit a first down in Minnesota territory, which didn't please Alan Page or the rest of the charged-up Viking defense. On the very next play, Page got his revenge, and number 88 made certain the official who had called the penalty realized it. Minnesota pushed Detroit backwards and forced a punt that was partially blocked by Carl Eller. Still, the Lions got a good roll, and Minnesota took over on the 50. On the next play, Detroit got their first break of the afternoon. Safety Wayne Rasmussen picked a deflected pass off the grass for an interception on the Detroit 36-yard line. A repeat of this turnover shows Coazzo drilled the ball off the chest of number 21 Jim Lindsay, and Rasmussen made a shoestring catch of the ball to give the Lions their first break of the ball game. Unfortunately, they had less than a minute to take advantage of it. Landry wanted to throw long, but the Viking prevent defense allowed only the outlet pass to his setbacks. Steve Owens advanced with 2 such passes, but got no further than the Viking 45, where Errol Mann's 53-yard attempt was much too short. The break went for naught, and the half ended 14-3. In the second half, and trailing by 11 points, Detroit's Greg Landry continued passing poorly. Ed Shirachman intercepted this one on Detroit's first series of the new half and returned it 33 yards all the way to the Detroit 12. The Vikings' early lead was vital for the defense because it had forced Greg Landry away from his strength, the running game. Landry was forced to pass despite the absence of his 2 prime receivers, and this, added to the fact he was not throwing well, had resulted in disaster for the Lions. Luckily for Detroit, Minnesota's offense was in low gear also, or the score would have been much greater. Despite the fact their defense had presented them with the ball on the 12, the offense couldn't take it in. Clint Jones was stopped short on 3rd down, and Minnesota again settled for a Cox 3-pointer that brought the score to 17-3. On the next series, with Bill Munson now at quarterback, Detroit continued to error. Aldy Taylor hit the line, lost the ball, and the Vikings' Bobby Bryant scooped it up, then lateral to Roy Winston, who raced alone down the left sideline with what appeared to be his second touchdown of the day. It would have put Detroit in a hopeless position. However, the ball was brought back because Bryant's lateral was ruled a forward lateral. As we look at the play again, we can see the official ruled correctly. By the time Winston touched the ball, he was beyond Bryant, thus making the play illegal. Minnesota didn't have a touchdown, but they did have possession of the ball on the Detroit 43. They didn't have it for long. Gary Coazzo threw to Stu Voigt, who tipped the pass into the arms of Lem Barney at the 45. Barney dodged tacklers all the way to the Minnesota 28, where he met Ed White head-on. Detroit had their second big break of the day, and this time they capitalized on it. For the first time, the Lions took over with good field position and were able to run. Steve Owens ran 2 successive plays for 8 yards right through the middle of the Viking defense. Owens has been the big story for Detroit this season, as he's already set a new Lion record for running and seems a certainty to go over the 1,000-yard mark. Owens' running had brought his team to the 4-yard line, where Bill Munson, off a play fake to Owens, found Larry Walton all alone in the corner of the end zone. The Lions had their first touchdown of the day, and we're back in the ball game. On the first series of the 4th quarter, Detroit was forced to punt from their end zone. Watch number 88, Alan Page, roar in to block the punt. Page and Doug Sutherland gave chase, but the ball rolled out of the end zone for a safety. Minnesota not only had 2 points, but would get the ball again on a free kick. Once again, their defense had put points on the board, and it performed as a prime offensive weapon. Today, its leader was Alan Page, the former defensive tackle from Notre Dame, possibly playing his finest game in his 5 seasons as a pro. The Vikings converted their free kick opportunity into a field goal, and it zoomed their lead to 22-10 when Bill Munson, trying to get his team back in the game, tried a pass with Gary Larson hanging onto him. The ball ended up in the hands of number 58, linebacker Wally Hilgenberg, who returned it to the Detroit 32. Again, the defense had caused a turnover, this one ending all hopes for the Lions. Another look at this vital play reveals Jim Marshall, number 70, caused Munson to delay his throw, giving Larson time to bore in. With the ball on the enemy 32, Oscar Reed drove straight ahead for 15 yards, one of the longest offensive plays of the day. 3 plays later, Fred Cox tried a field goal from the 15, and watch this one closely, or it's unlikely you'll ever see another play like this one. The kick was blocked, and the ball rolled dead toward the goal line. Watch number 83, Jim Mitchell, throw a block on Mick Tingelhoff. His foot kicked the ball, making it live. None of the Vikings except Jim Lindsay seemed to know what to do. He downed it, giving Minnesota a freak score that seemed to have everyone but the officials bewildered. Though the Lions were enraged, the call was correct and was appropriate end to today's scoring. Every Minnesota score was the result of the defense's superb play. There had been Roy Winston's touchdown interception, Clint Jones' score after a fumble recovery, 2 field goals resulting from a stolen pass and a safety, and now a bizarre touchdown from a blocked field goal. Appropriately, Detroit's last effort, a Munson pass, was negated by the Viking defense. The Purple Gang had given their team a 29-10 victory over their archenemy, the Lions. More importantly, the win gave the Vikings their 4th consecutive NFC Central Division title. Minnesota again is the undisputed champion of the NFL's rugged black and blue division. For the Lions, it was the end of any playoff chances. They now face a long winter of reevaluation as to why Joe Schmidt's playoff promise didn't come true. From the frozen Northland, we go to the frozen Midwest, where the Chiefs and the Raiders battled for the best in the AFC West. Kansas City drew first blood in the game. On their first series, the Chiefs had driven deep into Raider territory, only to miss a field goal. Here on their second, Dawson used the same strategy, mixing the run and the pass. Wary of the run, Dawson's play-action fake froze the Raider line, giving him time to pass and giving Otis Taylor time to clear his route in front of the Raider safeties. The Big O cantered in with the first of what would be many crucial plays he'd be involved in, and the Chiefs led 7-0. The Chiefs, in fact, dominated the first quarter both on offense and defense. The Raiders figured not to be able to run well against the AFC's second-best rushing defense, and they couldn't. But Darryl LaMonica did figure to be able to get to the Chiefs through the air, if not on the bomb, on short passes to his setbacks, and on medium ones to the AFC's top receiver, Fred Biletnikoff. He had some success on the short ones, but even though he had great protection, he was way off target when he tried for Biletnikoff on the 3rd down play, and Oakland went scoreless in the first quarter. The Chiefs, too, went scoreless the rest of the quarter and were burned badly by a penalty that nullified this typical Dawson to Taylor explosion. But on the first play of the second quarter, the Chiefs' defense got the ball back for Dawson as Marv Hubbard was hit hard and coughed the ball up to safety Jim Kearney, number 46. It was the game's first turnover, and the Chiefs did not waste it as they added a Jan Stenerud field goal here to make it 10-0. Then Oakland began to move the ball on the ground for the first time. Behind Gene Upshaw's blocking, Marv Hubbard, number 44, rolled to midfield. Hubbard's great success this season has caused some Chief fans to dub the big back with a less than affectionate nickname. But here, Mother Hubbard's cupboard went bare. Led by Big Buck Buchanan and Marv Upshaw, The Chiefs line poured in on LaMonica on a third down play and forced the Raiders general to take cover. The Raiders had to punt again. So far, they had 3 punts and a fumble in 4 tries. Dawson couldn't exploit his next opportunity either. In fact, he gave the ball right back to Oakland on his first mistake of the game. Nehemiah Wilson's theft set the Raiders up deep in Chiefs territory. But Coach John Madden decided it would not be LaMonica who would try to capitalize on the break. So the old man came in, Father Time, number 16, George Blanda. And sure enough, Blanda had a few miracles left in his 44-year-old pockets as he quickly took the Raiders in for a score. He didn't try to force anything long, hitting on quick shots to Biletnikoff. And from the one, he gave to Hubbard, and Oakland was finally on the board late in the first half, trailing 10-7. There were 48 seconds left in the half when Lenny Dawson took over on his own 35. Using his setbacks on runs and short passes, Dawson took the Chiefs to the Oakland 36, where he had 8 seconds left and no timeouts. Here, the Raiders suffered a lapse. Figuring Dawson's receiver would quickly step out, they didn't go for the tackle, and Dennis Homan shot down the sideline and almost went in. The play covered 7 seconds. There was 1 second left, time enough for Stenerud to kick his second field goal, and the half ended with the Chiefs ahead by 13-7. Dawson had just executed the most important 2-minute drill of the year in the AFC West. In the third quarter, both defenses were excellent, and both teams went scoreless. Buchanan's manhandling of Blanda suggested LaMonica's return, but the old man was just shaken up temporarily and did not miss a play. But Blanda may have hurt his shoulder worse than he'd let on, because later in the quarter, after he had taken Oakland to the Chiefs' 20, he threw up a zingless spiral that floated into Jimmy Marsala's hands, and the drive was ended. The Chiefs with the ball on their own 2. From here, Big Ben Davidson did his jumping swan dive impression to avoid a roughing call. That he did, but Dawson completed the pass anyway. However, the Chiefs bogged down and had to punt, and the Raiders' Gerald Irons blocked it. When it was finally recovered, the Raiders had their biggest break of the game on the Chiefs' 26. Blanda disdained any long pass and took the Raiders goalward on the strength of Marv Hubbard's running and receiving. On the first play of the final period, Blanda shrewdly threw the ball as soon as he saw Rod Sherman collide with Johnny Robinson and got an interference call and a 1st and goal at the 1. From the 1, Hubbard blasted in, and Blanda's extra point put Oakland in the lead 14-13 with a little less than a quarter to play. The miracle worker would have 2 more chances to increase his lead. The next time he had the ball, he and Ray Chester moved Oakland inside Chiefs territory, but the attack sputtered and Blanda tried for a 47-yarder. Blanda gives you the result. It was still 14-13 Oakland. 3 plays later, Blanda had the ball again due to an Oakland interception, but again the Chiefs denied him any penetration once inside the 30. So on 4th down, Blanda tried from 37, but his kick was blocked. Twice within a minute, the Raiders had opportunities to increase their lead to at least 4, and twice they had blown it. So with 5 minutes left in the game, the Chiefs' defense left to an ovation, and Lenny the Cool took over on his 7. He was immediately faced with a 3rd and 10, so the Iceman threw it right to icebox number 89, and the Big O got the first down. Twice more did Dawson go to Taylor on this drive. In fact, throughout the game, even knowing the Raiders were keying Taylor, Dawson challenged them and beat them. He refused to abandon his greatest strength. But the Big O's biggest catch was the one he never made. Fate and a foot had dealt the Raiders snake eyes as Jimmy Warren accidentally tripped Taylor at the Raiders' 12. It was still interference as the Raiders' offense watched intently. Dawson wanted only to make sure his runners did not fumble, and Wendell Hayes carried 3 times, holding the ball, getting to the 3. It was now 4th and inches on the 3, and Dan Connors discussed the strategy with Coach Madden. Meanwhile, Hank Stram had decided to play it safe, to go for the field goal. The Raiders' only hope was to block it. But it never happened. On the frozen Kansas City field, another Iceman had kicked the Chiefs into a 16-14 lead. Hank Stram has called Stenerud the most important man on the Chiefs, and he'd come through again. Now, with a minute and a half, the story of the rest of the game was written on Dan Connors' face as he watched the Miracle Man run out of miracles. With one last down, the Chiefs' reactions told the same story from the other side, and there was no doubt about the result. What had happened on Blanda's final down was that Jim Kearney intercepted his last gasp, and the game was over. So the Raider dynasty was through, at least this year, as they were eliminated from the playoffs with this loss. 8 out of the last 9 times these two teams have met, first place has been at stake in their division or conference. And it's the first time since '66 that the Chiefs have wound up number 1. They did it, as they've done most of their victories this season, with an aggressive defense, a Norwegian with a golden foot, and 2 of the coolest performers to ever play the game, Dawson and Taylor. It's a combination that may take them back to 1966, to the Super Bowl.